I got back at my cheating boyfriend by flirting with my dad. Story time. So me and Steve were dating for a few months before I started to suspect that he was cheating on me. He would very often hide his phone and be unavailable at the most random times. And then when I'd ask him where he'd been, he'd have no explanation. So one night when he was staying over at mine, I looked over and I could see Steve talking to a girl on Facebook Messenger. Which, come on Steve, we've moved on from Facebook Messenger now, babe. So I knew that Steve was in a Facebook group for bikers. And I thought that is the perfect place to get revenge. So I created a fake profile. I used a profile picture that I generated using AI. Next thing you know, I'm accepted into the group. I was going mad, sending friend requests to everyone in this group to make it look more real. And then to make it look like I actually gave a shit about motorbikes, I just posted some random pictures that I found on Google. And what do you know? Less than a week later, I get messages from Steve. He started the conversation by saying he'd literally never seen a more beautiful biker in his life and that he wanted to meet up with me. And I just thought I'd see how far he goes, so I told him that I had a boyfriend and he instantly replied that he had a girlfriend but nobody needed to know. And after that it all got very explicit very quickly. I just went with the flow of it all because I was gathering evidence. And then whilst all this was going on, another guy called Nick messaged me. New character unlocked. He was also in this biker group but his profile didn't have a picture of him on it. And his page was also set to private as well. He started off by asking how I'd been and I replied just saying, well, I found my boyfriend was cheating on me, so I'm pretty shit actually. And he responded so nice, he really built me up and encouraged me to leave him. So the next day, I confronted Steve with all of the evidence that I'd compiled from him cheating with me. And of course, he tried to put the blame on me. We ended up in a massive argument and now he is blocked on everything. I ended up speaking to this biker stranger about it. This man was so attentive. He texted me every single morning telling me to have a good day. And as the conversations went on, we started to get more and more flirty. We were adding spice, if you know what I mean. One day he asked me if he'd like to meet up with me. So we arranged to meet in a little cafe at the weekend. And I was prepared to live my Bella Swan fantasy, you know, like riding on the back of a motorbike, feeling all dangerous. Okay, so let's fast forward to the weekend. I had already texted Nick and told him which table I was at in the cafe. So I'm sitting there feeling all cute or whatever, and I see a very familiar motorbike pull up in the car park outside. Nick then proceeded to walk in the door and with his head down he walked directly to the table I was sat at. So when he got to my table he took his helmet off and standing in front of me was my dad. And all he said to me before walking away was, please don't tell your mum. The love of my life cheated on me for 7 years. So today I left him with a little parting gift. Story time! I met the love of my life 7 years ago. And I very quickly realised that Steve was the one for me. I very quickly started envisioning our potential relationship together and what our life would look like. Throughout our relationship, Steve would often reach out to me to ask for money. And it was often because he was having car trouble or he couldn't pay a bill. And I would literally always help him. That is not the right colour. I just saw it as us making an investment into our life together. In all, I probably gave him about 15 grand. And after 4 years of being together, Steve popped the question. So about 6 months into our marriage, Steve was telling me that he was having car trouble. Sorry, why am I unable to match my foundation? And he said that he needed about 2 grand for the repair this time. And this struck me as really odd. By this time, I knew his car as well as I knew my own. So one night when he was asleep, I went out to check what was up with his car or what he told me was up with his car. And lo and behold, what he said was wrong. There was no sign of it. And at this point, I started to spiral. So I have never done this before, but I went on Steve's phone. And I typed in £2,000 into his messenger to see what would come up. And straight away, up popped a text from him and his ex. And turns out the ex, Amy, was also having car troubles and she'd reached out to him to ask for some money. So I started to go back and read messages and they went back for years. She would often ask Steve for money that he would just happily send her. And it worked out that these were the exact same amounts he was asking me for. I had become a sugar mom for my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. So over the next couple of weeks, I started the revenge. When Steve would go to sleep, I'd start texting Amy off his phone. And I'd talk about plans to leave me, aka his wife. And I basically got it to the point where Amy was convinced that I was leaving and they were going to get back together. And every time I went on his phone, I would be sure to delete the text messages so that Steve would have no idea. This whole process went on for months. I slowly watched their text heat up between the two of them until it looked like Steve was pretty much set on leaving me. We didn't have many assets together at the time because I was finishing my surgical residency, so I knew that the divorce would be kind of quick and painless, to be fair. So the time came when I filed for divorce. I was very generous with our $10,000 worth of assets and we split it evenly, but I decided that I wanted a little bit more. Because you see, not only is it assets that are divided up equally during a marital severance, but debt is as well. And medical school is very expensive. And if you want to get precise, it's $250,000 expensive. So since I was the one to pay for your mistress for years, you can now pay for my medical school. Enjoy my parting gift, babe. I got caught in a love triangle with my brother. Story time. And this girl freaked out so much that she ended up putting me in hospital. So me and my brother Steve lived together in an apartment. It just worked out cheaper in the end. It was in the middle of college and his work, so we moved in together. And we each have our own bathroom and bedroom. So initially, when Steve met Amy, I didn't even realise that he'd got a new girlfriend. Me and him are on completely different time zones, like he's very nocturnal, I am not. So yeah, we very rarely saw each other. I didn't even know Amy had been sleeping over. So it was Sunday morning, I was getting ready for my nice, everything shower, I was stood making myself a nice cup of tea. So imagine this, I turned around from making my nice cup of tea to see a naked woman stood in my kitchen. Amy then proceeds to yell at me, screaming, "What are you doing in my apartment?" Your apartment, babes? I fucking live here. So I tried to calmly explain to Amy that I did in fact live there and I was actually Steve's sister, but this woman did not want to listen. She then ran into Steve's room and was like, "How could you cheat on me?" And I'm pretty sure she slapped him a few times. And if you think that's wild, she then ran back towards me and went for my throat. And that was when Steve intervened and tried to explain this whole situation to her. This girl was irate. She could not be calmed down. Meanwhile, the kettle has finished boiling. And before me or Steve could do anything, Amy grabs the kettle and throws boiling water all over Steve's face. That was when I was like, fuck this, I'm out. So I started to run away, and then all of a sudden I felt this absolute smack on the back of the head and realised she had thrown the bloody kettle at me. I hit the deck. And I am convinced that I even passed out for a short while. So I pulled myself together and called the ambulance. And the ambulance took us both to hospital. And Steve had to stay there for 3 days because of how bad the burns were. And on day 2 of his hospital stay, Amy came to see him and just stood in the room like nothing had happened. I later found out that the reason for that hospital visit was that she'd gone wanting an apology from me and Steve. Amy, please dear God, read the room. She stood in the corner of this room staring at me. I just looked at her and told her to fuck off. Am I the arsehole for kicking my boyfriend's girl best friend out of my Halloween party because I didn't like her costume? Story time. So I was throwing a Halloween party and my boyfriend and a bunch of his friends were invited, including his girl best friend, who we'll call Amy. So me and my boyfriend decided to do a little couples costume moment. So we decided we were going to dress as Peter Peter Pumpkin Eater. It's basically where the boyfriend wears a t-shirt that says Peter Peter and the girlfriend dresses up as a pumpkin. Just because, you know. And I was so excited. I am literally never good at picking out costumes. So the night before the party, Amy texted me and asked what I was going to wear, and I explained everything. She said she had no clue what she wanted to wear and she'd probably just go with something easy like a cat. So fast forward to the night of the party, everyone is there, everyone is having a nice time. That was until Amy walked in dressed as a pumpkin. When she walked into my house, she walked straight through my front door and made a beeline for my boyfriend and gave him a big hug. And I swear, I've never seen a room go quieter quicker in my life. So I pulled Amy aside and asked if I could speak to her privately. So I spoke to her privately in my bedroom and I was like, listen, why have you decided to wear that? You knew the details of my couple's costume. She said that she didn't think it was a big deal because she thought it would be better as a group costume. I then told her that I didn't think it was very funny and I asked if she would change. And I offered her a costume that I'd got spare just in case I didn't like my little pumpkin. Her face then started to turn bright red. She began yelling, saying that I didn't control her. Babe, you're literally disrespecting my relationship. Shut up. She then started to cause a massive scene. She was yelling, screaming, basically saying that I needed to lighten up. I inevitably ended up asking her to leave. And after that, I just returned to the party. But it just felt like the mood had shifted dramatically at this point. My boyfriend agrees that she crossed the line and is planning to cut her off. But some of my other friends don't agree with what I said. They said I was just being dramatic and I should have let her stay. So what do you think? Am I the arsehole for leaving my ex homeless? Story time. So me and my ex-boyfriend Steve have been together since we were in high school. And we were in the midst of planning our wedding until 2 weeks ago because I found out that Steve was having an affair. One day when Steve was out, I noticed that his phone was blowing up with texts from his mum, and these messages were just not stopping. I thought something horrific had happened, so I got curious and checked his watch. And that is when I realised that these messages actually were not from his mum. The messages were actually from this random girl expressing how excited she was to hook up with him that night. So essentially, Steve named this random girl mum in his phone so that I wouldn't cotton on. And when he got home from work, Steve was intensely trying to find his watch. And this boy was frantic. He was panicking. He was asking me if I'd seen it. And I just sat on my phone all nonchalant like, no, Couldn't be me. After this, I purposely started to get distant with him, and this made him panic even more. He then started texting his best friend Alan. Alan later had the decency to text me that day, telling me that Steve was having an affair and that if he could help in any way, he would. So I told Alan that I already knew and that I was already planning my revenge. Alan actually really took my side. He was like, if you need someone to lean on, I'll be here, and if you need anyone to help execute your revenge, give me a call. A few weeks went by and our apartment lease was up, so I started to pack all of our bits. I also took all of our money from our shared account. So I threw everything in my car and then I just waited for Steve to get home. When Steve finally got home, I was sat on the sofa with all of my suitcases, and then I just got up and started to walk towards my car. Steve was losing his shit. He was chasing after me, asking where I was going. I said nothing. I just got in my car and drove over to my brother's for the night. So this morning, I woke up to multiple messages from Steve asking why our rent wasn't paid. And apparently there was even someone at the door banging, telling him that he needed to get out and leave. He also messaged everyone in my family telling him that he's now homeless because of me and that I'm an arsehole, which is nice. Everyone except my sister fully agrees that he got what he deserved. My sister and mum told me it was very unfair what I had done to Steve, that I should never have taken my money, the money that I made, out of our joint bank account. They said I should have at least tried to work things out with Steve. My mum even went as far as to tell me if I didn't try and make it back with Steve, that she would disown me and cut me out of her will. I said, well, if Steve really was homeless, I know a girl that is really excited to see him so he can go stay with her. So what do you think, am I the arsehole? My ex wanted me to be a crazy ex-girlfriend and he ended up ruining his life over it. Story time. So my boyfriend Steve has always been the biggest drama queen. Every single disagreement ended up turning into a massive argument. And after 6 months, I got so tired of it all, so I decided to leave him. And the breakup went surprisingly well. It was smooth, quick, painless. The breakup kind of came about because we were having an argument because I did not want to move in with a guy that I had only known for 4 months. And my knowing this matter caused tears and screams. You should have seen this boy. It's quite tragic, actually. I should have just ended it all there and then, to be honest. So after that breakup, I actually didn't hear from him for a few days. And then I started to get all of these strange Facebook messages. They said that I should stop bothering him, and if they found out that I was at his house again, that they would report me to the police. You know, shocker, I actually had never done any of the sort. I was sent screenshots of texts that I had supposedly sent but never did. Some of his friends even called my boss and told them that I was using the store cameras to monitor what he was doing. I basically worked as an assistant for a photographer and they were claiming that I was stealing cameras and taking pictures of my ex. But my boss knew what my boyfriend was like, so he just shunned it all off. So one weekend I was in the mall and I saw my ex and he started running towards me, arms out wide, wanting a hug. I was obviously having none of that, so I just walked straight past him, leaving him with his arms outstretched. And next thing I know, I am being pulled back by my hair. Next thing I know, a woman is screaming in my face, telling me to stop stalking her boyfriend. So I just laughed in her face, which looking back was a really, really bad idea. Because she just went straight in and yeah. She slapped me. She was screaming, stop stalking my boyfriend, and before I knew it, the attack was done and over. It was so quick, it happened all in a blur. Anyway, then security came over and this woman starts telling them how I'm a stalker and I've been threatening her boyfriend. And then I ended up getting kicked out of the mall and arrested. Like for part 2. This is a moment that I will literally never forget. Story time. So I was the poor kid growing up. My mum used to send me to birthday parties with no present just so I could eat. And it got to a point where I knew what was happening and I was embarrassed as hell. In 5th grade, I went to my best friend Amy's birthday party and she asked me if I could sleep over the night before the party. And obviously this was a win for me because I got to see Amy more and it was also a win for my mum as well. So when Amy was in the shower, her mum called me into the living room and laid out on the living room floor were all of the toys that Amy's mum had bought her for her birthday. She then told me that I could pick a present and that I could wrap it myself. She then let me put a tag on it that said that it was Amy's birthday present from me. I have kids of my own now and I'm still so grateful to Amy's mum. And that one act of kindness has never left me. This might just be the pettiest thing I have ever done. Story time. So my little brother has a girlfriend who we'll call Amy. And this girl might just be one of the most self-centered and obnoxious people I have ever met. So not too long ago, they came to stay at mine for the weekend. And when they left, Amy left so much of her stuff at my house. Probably because she didn't know where anything was because she left her shit everywhere. Anyway. She left this North Face jacket and then like all of her toiletries. So about a week later, her and my brother ended up moving into their first apartment together. Which is all fun and games, right? Wrong. After he paid for the moving truck, the utilities, half of the rent for the month, the girlfriend cheats on my brother with her ex. She then proceeds to kick my brother out of the apartment. So not only now was he broke from paying for everything, but he was also heartbroken and homeless. So at some point, she must have realised that she'd left half of her stuff at my house, because she started calling, texting, blowing up my brother's emails to see if I could send back half of her stuff. Now, I wasn't going to send them back because of how much she had disrespected my flat when she was here. But my brother was like, please, can you just do it? So she gets off my back and leaves me alone. So being the loving and supporting sister I am, I bundled up all of her stuff and put it in a bag together. I was giving that North Face jacket no care or attention at all. I then just wrote a really nice note and I put it in just saying, sorry that it took so long to send you your bits, hope they get there safe and hope she has a really nice future with her new boyfriend. And the note was written in permanent marker. And the paper just so happened to be resting on her North Face jacket. And because it was written in permanent marker, the marker bled through to the North Face. Oh no! And in another turn of unfortunate events, the shampoo cap just happened to be not screwed on properly. And it's just such a mystery of how that could have happened. And then apparently there was a razor in there, which I obviously had no clue was in there. I just picked all of her stuff off my bathroom floor and put it in the bag. That didn't have a cover on it, so in transport, the blades had made little micro tears in her jacket. So she emailed all of this to my brother. And after that, we never heard from her again. My ex tried to get me fired, so I got him fired instead. Story time. So I was just having a bit of fun with this guy called Steve, and he wanted it to get a little bit more serious. I mean, why wouldn't he? Look at me, I'm a catch. I had just come out of a really serious relationship, so I was not in the mood to get into anything anytime soon. And in response, Steve called my work. He spoke to my manager and he tells my manager that I'm a total, lazy girl. I steal from the store. I go into work hungover literally every weekend. And my manager, who we'll call Alan, was just on the other end of the phone like, okay, babe. He quickly shut the call down, and then when I came into work later that day, he was absolutely howling about it. He was telling me that in response to what Steve was saying, he was like, she doesn't steal from us, and even if she did come in hungover, so do I, babe, so what are you trying to prove? So even though I wasn't in trouble, I was still absolutely raging at Steve. And Alan was like, listen, we're quiet, why don't you just call his work? Alan then puts the shop phone in my hand and goes, do it, ruin him. I considered my options. I did not want to be like a bitter person who was out to get revenge and ruin anyone's life. But then just as I was about to put the phone down, my phone starts blowing up and it's Steve. He is hurling all of this abuse at me and I'm like, let's do it. So in the most Karen way, I dialed his work and I asked to speak to the manager. So when she came to the phone, I started to tell her how I'd been into the fast food restaurant the day before. And there was a young guy behind the till who had been hitting on me. I said, towards the end of our interaction, he had asked for my number. And when I declined giving it to him because I said I had a boyfriend, literally his whole demeanour changed towards me and he became quite volatile. And at this point I was like, let's have some fun. I said that, yeah, I told him I didn't want to give him my number because I had a boyfriend and he called me a lying, sleazy little bitch. He said, and after that interaction, I will no longer be a customer of yours. And the manager was like, I'm so sorry about this. Can you give me any details so I can work out who the employee was? And I was like, right, best acting skills. I paused for dramatic effect and I said, I think his name might have been Steve. She then went on to say that I didn't need to worry about Steve talking to other women like that ever again. And I was like, bingo. And I said, that's great to hear because I can only imagine if he speaks to me like that, he's obviously probably spoken to other women like that before in your establishment. And after that, I put down my phone, I high-fived Alan, and I went on with my shift. So the next day, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of forgot about the whole thing. And then I get a load of texts from Steve. And he is now moaning about the fact that he got fired. Well, isn't that just a shame, Steve? Am I wrong for getting with my friend's husband? Story time. Listen, I know how bad it sounds. Just stick with me, okay? So there was this new guy who started out at work and we'll call him Steve. Now, I'm a single girl and I like to live that single life. So one night I was so bored and I was like, I'm just going to scroll through some dating apps, see who's out there. And I come across Steve at work. And Steve is looking a little bit sexy. Basically started talking and we got together basically the next day. At this point, I'd been seeing a couple of different guys, so I didn't even think to mention it to Amy, who is my friend, by the way. On the date, Steve was dead flirty, he never mentioned a girl, he didn't even have a ring on. So my company decided that they were going to host a little party. And it was like a wives and husbands are invited type sitch. And when I got there, I was looking good. I'm like, first step, we go to the bar. I see Amy and I'm like, hey girl, how's the night going? She asks me if I've bought anyone. I ask her if she's bought anyone. And she is like, yeah, I came with my husband. I was like, oh, didn't even know you had a husband, babe. Like, where is he? Let me meet him. So she turns around and she beckons this guy over. I have never experienced shock like this very moment. It was only bloody Steve. And in that moment, I had no clue what to do. So I was like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. And then ran. I literally didn't say anything else to them all night. I basically avoided them. And he definitely recognised me as well because he was avoiding eye contact. Let me tell you, this night ate me up. I came to the conclusion that I just had to tell her. So this evening after work, I pulled Amy aside and I told her everything that had happened. Then she got really upset with me because how could I get with her husband? She said that I should have known. So I said to her, like, what are you going to do? Meaning, like, confronting Steve on the fact that he's been cheating on her. But no, she just says, well, I'm not going to be your friend anymore. She then started the name calling. She goes, you're a horrible person, you can rot in hell. And I'm thinking, are we not angry at the wrong person here? I do 100% feel awful. But at the same time, I literally had no idea. What do you think? I broke up with my boyfriend because I thought he was cheating on me, but years later, I'd found out the truth. Story time. So me and my now ex-boyfriend, who we'll call Steve, had been together for about 2 years. It all started when we decided to plan a little trip together. I'd been saying for years I really wanted to go to Switzerland, so that is what we settled on. Let me tell you, as soon as that plane trip was booked, Steve started acting different. He would be home less and less, hiding his phone from me. He hardly talked about his day anymore. One of the biggest red flags was when he started to get late night calls and he would jump out of bed, like wouldn't let me see who was on the other end of the phone, wouldn't take the call in the room with me. I was getting so suspicious. So one day his best friend Alan comes round to our house. I explained everything to Alan. And even Alan started to act weird and he'd never ever been like that with me before. The more I was telling Alan, the redder his face was getting. And that was when I just accepted that Steve was definitely cheating on me and that Alan knew all about it and was trying to hide it. I was not about to let anyone disrespect me like that, so I walked back into our house and I started to pack my bags. It was then that Steve realised that something was up and he kept trying to stop me from packing. But I was just so angry I couldn't even look at him. Shortly after that, my brother came to pick me up. I ended up staying with my brother for a few days and I ended up blocking Steve and his whole family on literally everything. A week later, my brother came home with a letter from Steve and I just tore it up straight away. I was like, no, not reading it. Eventually, I went and moved my stuff out of mine and Steve's house. And when I went in, there was another letter on my desk. Again, just ripped it up, didn't even read it. Let's fast forward 3 years to the present day. I am in a cafe and I see Alan. I hadn't seen Alan since that night, so I went over to say hi. But this man was not happy to see me. He told me that I must be the most awful woman on the planet. And I was like, oh, that feels a bit personal, Alan. Why? And that was when he told me that Steve had been planning to propose to me in Switzerland. I was so shocked that I dropped my cup of coffee onto the floor. The late night calls were from like an event planner in Switzerland. I just stared at Alan in absolute disarray. Alan gave me the dirtiest look and then walked away. And now I feel so nasty and so stupid. I could have literally had it all if I'd have just asked what was going on. And now I'm thinking, should I try and contact Steve? Let me know what you think. My husband got arrested whilst we were stood at the altar. Story time. So me and my boyfriend Steve had been together for about 3 years. So just before I graduated, I noticed that Steve was starting to act really, really strange. He wasn't leaving the house too early in the mornings anymore. Often when I came home early from finishing class, he was already at home. Which was not like him at all. He'd normally finish a lot later than I would. And I could tell by the look of the apartment that he hadn't done anything all day apart from playing video games. He had a job as an accountant, so I was so confused as to what was happening. So I confronted him about all this. And that was when he confessed to me that he had quit his job. And I was like, bitch, you better be joking. But then he went on to say that he'd actually won the lottery, so didn't need to work anymore. I was literally in shock. I didn't ask any questions. I just let myself get carried away with it all. Which looking back was super dumb, but don't judge. Shortly after this, Steve asks me to marry him. And Steve was like, we're going to have the biggest and best wedding. Now we have all this money. This might sound so dumb, but nothing seemed out of sorts to me. Steve was paying every single wedding expense without a question. He literally even booked me my dream honeymoon in Hawaii. So fast forward to the wedding. Everything was beautiful until it wasn't. The ceremony was so beautiful and we were just about to start exchanging our vows when the flipping FBI stormed the church. Please imagine me stood there, full bride, full wedding dress, and then FBI walk in and walk straight up to Steve. And Steve was arrested. He didn't try and fight anything, he just went with them. So I later found out what he was actually arrested for. Steve had been arrested for multiple cases of credit card fraud. He hadn't won the lottery at all, he had just been taking out different credit cards in different people's names. And one of those people was his former boss, whose wallet he had stolen. But you know what, it was low-key kind of a slay for me because everything had already been paid for. So we celebrated as best as we could for the rest of the night, and I still got to go on my dream trip to Hawaii. And it was on that trip where I actually met my now husband. And as far as I know, Steve is still in prison. My boyfriend doesn't want to get married because he doesn't believe in marriage. Or is it because of the wife and kids he has? Story time. So I was a few years into my relationship with Steve, and I started approaching him with the topic of marriage. And after many conversations, we came to the conclusion that Steve didn't believe in marriage. However, he said as a sign of his commitment to me, he would move in with me. So Steve works for a production company and he often has to travel abroad for work. And this was why he was very rarely home. So one day I got given an early finish from work, we all love him, and as I walked in the door I saw Steve on the sofa. And he had told me that he was actually supposed to be working in France that week, but he said that they'd got everything done a little bit quicker than they thought, so he came home early to surprise me. And I didn't believe a word he was saying. And what was even more suspicious was that he then told me that he didn't need to travel much for the next few weeks because all the filming locations were in like the towns around us. So since I wasn't expecting Steve to be home so early, I took a week off. And he didn't know this. I thought one day I'd treat myself to a little shopping trip, and that was when I saw my babes, Steve, hand in hand with another woman and a baby. And I managed to follow them for a really long time without being noticed. And as you probably could guess, Steve was actually this baby's father. And of course, she was his wife. So that night he told me he was going to sleep in a hotel, which, Steve, do better, man. So I used this time to collect every single picture that we had ever had together, and I made the most extravagant photo album you've ever seen. And literally, the next opportunity I got, I was following him wherever he was gonna go. We ended up in this absolutely stunning house in the suburbs. That is when I saw the same woman that I'd seen him on the other day greet him at the door. I had apparently found Steve's family home. So I waited for a little while, and that is when I saw the postman. It was game time, bitches. I gave him my gorgeous handmade photo album, and I told him exactly what address to send it to. His wife took the photo album, the door closed, and I waited. And let me tell you, the screams that could be heard afterwards, I could literally hear them down the street in my car with the windows up. What preceded was the woman chasing Steve out of the house with a rolling pin. And let me tell you, that sight was delicious. I started seeing my husband's mistress's husband. Story time. So I met my husband about 10 years ago and I loved him for our entire marriage. We have 2 kids together, and I found out a year ago that my husband has been seeing his colleague. And I literally cannot explain the pain I felt when I found out. I felt ugly, undesirable, stupid, and I got obsessed with this other woman who we'll call Amy. Through this obsession, I obviously found out who her husband was. And we'll call the husband Steve. Turns out I actually had mutual friends with Steve, and he had no clue, so I contacted him and I told him everything that was going on with our spouses. So we were talking back and forth for about a week, and after that time, we both knew what we wanted. And let me tell you, this man is a god. So after seeing each other a few times just for revenge, we started to realise that we actually did really like each other. We started seeing each other at least once a week, and I wish I could see him more. We came to the conclusion that since we had each other, it didn't really matter what our spouses did. I really don't want my kids to grow up in 2 different homes, and he knows that a divorce would just be far too costly for him as well. And I'm not gonna lie, at this point, I low-key love the game of it all. Alrighty, let's talk about my thoughts on this one. Surely I'm not the only one that's thinking like, we should just do a bit of a wife swap. And she says that she doesn't want her kids to grow up in 2 different households. However, I feel like it's probably a little bit more healthy for the kids if this doesn't all blow up in the end, that they know that everything was handled amicably and everyone's happy. I mean, let's face it, that's not a mirror. Not a single person in this situation is happy in their relationship. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sleeping with each other. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Am I the arsehole for covering up cameras that were in the living room, bathroom and bedroom in my husband's family home? Story time. So I recently got married to my husband, Steve. And shortly after, we moved in with his family. It's this big house on a farm in the middle of nowhere. and it feels like quite a traditional setup. So the people that live there, there's obviously me and Steve. Then there's Steve's brother, so my brother-in-law and his wife. And then there's also Steve's dad, so my father-in-law. So like I was saying, it's quite a traditional setup. Me and my sister-in-law Amy are expected to be like stay-at-home wives, and the guys will like go out and work on the farm. And this was like a level of traditionalism that I was not used to. So within a few days of moving in, I noticed that our bedroom, bathroom and living room all had cameras in them. And this made me extremely uncomfortable. So obviously I brought this up with my husband Steve, and I was like, this is making me uncomfortable here. But he was like, don't worry about it, it's just for safety. And I was like, right, okay, but what about the ones in the bathroom? That's kind of weird. And he very promptly responded with, those ones are fake and stop bringing it up. Like, no sir, this is weird. I was like, well, if he's not going to do anything about it, I will. So of course I went to go cover them up, because unfortunately, babes, you don't get to see me in the shower. One day Steve got home and he was very, very angry. He asked if he could talk to me in the bedroom. He then proceeded to shout at me, saying that I had no right to change anything in his family home. He was like, I told you to just ignore the cameras. So I was not letting this go. I felt so unsafe and uncomfortable, and I was like, babe, this is not all right. I don't feel good about it. And that was when he said, do you not trust me? What the bloody hell has trust got to do about this? He then went on to try and reassure me that only family had access to these cameras. And I'm not really too sure what that one was trying to achieve, but it didn't achieve it anyway. My darling husband then told me to stop being a problem. So we go to bed, and the next morning I go down for breakfast because we all used to eat together, and no one is talking to me, including my sister-in-law Amy. So when all the men had gone to work and it was just me and Amy, she told me to stop causing a mess, and then went on to say that she's no longer allowed to talk to me as punishment for being disrespectful. She told me to stop being an arsehole and to listen to Steve, and then said to not involve her in any of our marital problems. I'm sorry, but last time I checked, I didn't think I was being an arsehole. But apparently everyone in this house thinks that I am now the arsehole. And now I'm low-key starting to second guess myself. So what do you think? Am I the arsehole here? My ex tried to ruin my life, so I got him done for arson. Story time. So my ex Steve is an absolute idiot. So when me and Steve got divorced, we split everything evenly. Even the land that our house was sat on was split equally. And as soon as I got the divorce papers through and everything was legal, I built a house on the land. And it was right next to Steve's house. It was this like gorgeous stone house, and it was something me and Steve had always spoken about building together. So in a plot twist of the century, Steve just decided to buy goats. And I think the logic behind it was that he would let the goats out accidentally one day and they would have ruined my flower beds. I don't know. He even went as far as to name one of the bloody goats after me. So every night I would hear this stupid man shouting my name when he was trying to get the goats to come inside. So the goats would often get onto my land, so I called the police a couple of times to see if they could come and sort it out. They did, and I think this actually caused Steve quite a lot of trouble. So unfortunately for Steve, he wasn't that great with money and eventually couldn't afford his house anymore. So he decided to put the house up for sale. Guess who bought it? Me! I was not expecting him to accept my offer at all. Steve's level of petty at this point was unmatched. So the day came where we finished the papers. Buckle in, guys. The day I picked up the keys for the house from our attorney, Steve set the house on fire. So I was all buzzing to get my new house, obviously, like my revenge house. Turns out it was actually on fire. The fire brigade was already there, and guess what Steve was doing? He was sat on the grass on the front lawn on like a deck chair. Top was off, beer in hand, and he was just watching the house burn. So when the police eventually arrived, Steve said he would take the credit for starting the fire. So my ex is now in prison for arson, and this was actually my get ready with me to go to his trial. When my dad died, he left me and my mum millions of pounds, but no one has a clue where that money's come from. Story time. So I was never really very interested in my dad's job. He used to just say he was an accountant. He never really used to talk about his day-to-day life. My dad really didn't care about what direction I went in life, only that I ever got good grades. And when I look back now as an adult, we really did have a lot of money growing up. My dad would pay for holidays, new phones, literally anything that I needed for school. So sadly, my dad got cancer and he passed away a year later. And when the funeral came round, there were so many people there that me and my mum just had no clue who these people were. We'd never heard of them in our life. It was just ow! Oh my god, my soul nearly just left my body. Anyway, there was just rows of men wearing expensive suits that just sat there scowling the whole time. And I was convinced a couple of them had weapons. And the weirdest thing happened. So as we were, lowering the coffin into the ground, a guy came and dropped a £1 little coin on the coffin when it was in the ground. He then bowed his head and said, "Thank you, boss." So later on in the day, I was like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I approached the pound dropping man and I was like, "That was such a nice thing you did. Does it have any meaning, like the gesture?" And then the man just shook his head and laughed in my face. So then we had the reading of the will and I was shooketh. I obviously just expected my mum to get everything. And that was when the lawyer just started handing out money that me and my mum didn't even know my dad had. We've literally done everything we possibly can to find out where this money's come from. And we are convinced that it's not legal.